Good evening, everyone. My name is Euclid Bautista, and I'm one of the co-clerks of FGC's Institutional Assessment Implementation Committee, alongside FCHES, yes. We quaintly refer to the committee as IAIC because our full name is quite a mouthful, and I often get tongue-tied just trying to say our full name. I prefer the pronouns he, him, his, and currently reside in the unceded lands of Chinook peoples here in what is now known as Portland, Oregon. I'd like to briefly tell you about IAIC. The goals and objectives of this committee is to provide support, leadership, and accountability to FGC staff and volunteers in their efforts to transform FGC into an actively anti-racist faith organization. Additionally, we are charged to help implement the recommendations of FGC's 2018 institutional assessment and to support and encourage the anti-racism work of FGC affiliated monthly and yearly meetings. That said, I invite you all to come to the People of Color Center during Friday's afternoon activities to hear a report from IAIC about the journey of various FGC's committees to implement and engage with the recommendations of the institutional assessment. Now let me introduce tonight's plenary speaker, Yolanda Webb. Some of you as workshop leaders, as committee members for the 2022 gathering, have had an opportunity to listen and learn from Yolanda on ways we can prepare and execute our work through an inclusive and anti-racist lens. FGC's executive committee and staff, alongside many others, felt training ourselves in this way is important in our journey to transform ourselves into an actively anti-racist faith community. Before we hear from Yolanda herself, let me tell you a little more about her. Yolanda Webb is the CEO and Principal Advisor for the WEBB Advisory Group, LLC, an international minority, women-owned consulting group providing executive coaching, leadership development, executive compensation, organizational strategy, human resource consulting, and inclusion, diversity, and equity strategies that work. Known as the People Whisperer, Yolanda's more than 30 years of experience understanding the foundations of human behavior has led to significant results in business growth and the crucial conversations that stabilize workforces, improve retention, and staff performance. She is a recognized authority in inclusion, diversity, and bias. As a policy expert, she has lent her voice to issues impacting marginalized and underserved communities. She is known for helping turn around organizations facing issues of racial bias, charges of discrimination, and miscommunication caused by cultural incompetency. A graduate of HBCU, Tennessee State University in Nashville, Tennessee, Yolanda has served in several critical senior executive leadership roles across the nation and on several boards. Most recently, Yolanda was selected to the class of 2022 for Leadership Denver. In the winter of 2022, Yolanda led the 2022 Gathering Committee, workshop leaders, gathering staff, and FGC's Long Range Conference Planning Committee through a series of trainings on bias. Yolanda obtained a Master's of Arts in Humanities with a theology concentration from Xavier University in Cincinnati, Ohio. She is the mother of 2 children and a grandma of 2 beautiful granddaughters. Please welcome and open your hearts to Yolanda Webb.
Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Tonight, I'm going to invite you to follow me on being human and becoming divine. Our journey back towards the light. I wrote Journey Towards the Light in 2010. It was a very dark time in my life as I lost both my business and my fiance, who died from cancer. As I sat on the edge of my bed one night, contemplating ending my own pain, I decided that I was really ready to learn how to live and to learn how to take the road back out of the shadows and back towards the light. As we journey towards the light, I've learned this one thing, that we cannot know the light unless we can name our shadows. It was in that moment that I really truly began to understand that the light of death, which is losing all of those things that keep me bound, can also become the light of life. It's the light that leads us back to the Creator. It's here and it's now, and it unlocks the mystery of living. The day I decided to die was the day I decided to live. Today we're going to spend some time talking about going back towards the light. Before we begin, I'd love for us to take 5 minutes to go within by breathing deeply yet softly. And you can close your eyes for this as you use this time for reflection. I want you to think about what your own journey back towards the light really means. We have been called to heal wounds, to unite what has fallen apart, and to bring home any who have lost their way. God says to us that the more hopeless our circumstances, the more likely our salvation. The greater our cares and worries, the more genuine our prayers. The darker our life feels, the greater our need for His light. And so today I invite you to take your journey with me, all of our journeys back towards the light. Is any of this real? When my youngest granddaughter was 3, she and I were having a conversation. And as she was getting out of the tub, she gave me a really puzzled look. And she said to me, "Nana, is any of this real?" "Any what?" I asked. "Any of this," she said, pointing with her fingers. "Any of this I can see with my eyes." Startled and a little bit taken aback, I knew exactly what she meant, because she was still closer to the light. She was still closer to source, and her spirit was still connected to the light. From the moment we enter the world, each and every one of us is heading back towards the light. Charlie, by the way, is now 11, and I've watched to see if she has retained any of the knowledge of the light that she asked about that day. But like all of us, her heart and mind has been absorbed by this world around her. Yet I learned something that day. I know that there is a way for us to get back there right now in the present moment of our lives. But it starts with us first knowing who we are and understanding how we see the world around us and how, unfortunately, the world around us sees us. You see, it's important because we have to become self-aware. We have to ask ourselves, if we're going to make this journey back towards the light, it really is all about understanding both the light and the darkness. We cannot identify the light unless we are ready to identify the shadows. And self-awareness is this capacity to view ourselves clearly, from our values, from our desires and our passions, to our moods, beliefs, thoughts, and feelings. I was having this conversation with a couple that I work with a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things that we talked about was during their prayer life, they feel like they are really connected to light, they're really connected to source, but the minute they get in their car and they're in a traffic jam, they're yelling and cursing, and they don't know where that comes from. That comes from the shadow side of who we are. But unless you can identify that, unless you can name that, you can never move closer towards the light. And when we give ourselves permission to be introspective, we increase our internal self-awareness or our self-knowledge, and we realize that our journey of self-discovery will make our journey back towards the light, one that's filled with peace, one that's filled with joy, one that's filled with happiness. But it takes self-discovery in order to do that. And when we consider how others see us, we increase our external self-awareness. You know, many of us, I'm guilty. We don't like to have our children tell us who we are. You know the times when they are teenagers and they say to you, "Mom, you are da 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 da," and we brush that off. But they see us. And so when we can increase our external self-awareness, which really relates to how well we understand other people's impressions of who we are and how we see the world around us, it can lead us closer on our journey back towards the light. When we are intentional along this journey back, we can help others back along this journey towards the light. And that's why we're here, to help one another. I want us to take some time, about 15 minutes, and you don't have to, we're not going to go into breakout rooms for this, but you do need a piece of paper and a pencil. And if you have an envelope handy, an envelope. And there's a series of questions, and I will read the questions off here. A series of questions, and I want you to write the questions down. And when you're finished, I want you to fold this piece of paper up and put it in an envelope. Write your name on the envelope and today's date, and then date it 1 year from today. You're going to be asking yourself these self-reflection questions. A year from now, when you open this envelope up, it's proof of how far you have come along the journey. Self-reflection, as a former behavior therapist, self-reflection is one of those things that can help lead us back on this journey. And so, first question, if you were writing to your past self, what would you choose to include about who you are right now, today, not yesterday, not 24 hours ago, not an hour ago? If you were writing to yourself, what would you choose to include about who you are right now? Second question, imagine you're talking to your future self. What would you say about what makes you, you? And the third question, I want you to take a moment to get in tune with your thoughts and write a little about today. Try not to write solely about the tasks and activities that you've done today, but how you felt. Did you get angry at some point? Did you say something that you regretted? Did you help someone? Did you show love? Were you at peace? And what you thought at the time. Remember, this is the self that you're taking back into the light. And so these 3 questions, if you write them down and write them out, your responses to them, date your envelope, today's date, and a year from today. And put it somewhere. And if you're like me, you're going to be scrambling trying to figure out a year from today, where did you put it? But pick it up a year, and you can set a reminder on your calendar. You can set a reminder in your phone. But open the envelope a year from today. And it is one of those tools that can help you determine how far you have come in your journey back towards the light. And we're going to take about 15 minutes. I think we're down to maybe about 14, but take some time. So let's debrief. And this is the participation time. I want to know, how did this exercise make you feel when you have to go deep within? And you can come off of mute. This isn't about raising hands. This is just share out, how did this make you feel to have to write a letter to yourself, to answer questions about yourself for your future self? How did the exercise make you feel?
Intimate.
Intimate. That's a great word. And intimate with no one but yourself. And we tend to shy away from that. What did you feel you learned from this exercise? Someone wrote in the chat, a little anxious that I might get it wrong. And yes, feel free to write into the chat.
I felt reassured. I was amazed that what came to mind to share is that a lot of things are working well in my life in a long-term way. Not as in I'm proud of myself or I've accomplished a lot, but my life works on a day-to-day basis, and I really appreciate that.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing.
I journal every day, but this was an interesting way of compressing all of these days into one big paragraph to see where I am and where I'm going, what's happened to me. So it's very interesting.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Someone else wrote in the chat, I'm stronger than I knew and have grown more than I knew. Thank you for sharing. Are there any?
I know that I'm a very, very lucky person, and I really appreciate that, and you're asking us to write about it.
Thank you for sharing. The chat, surprised at how readily the shadow showed up and that it was good. Thank you for sharing that. We're going to talk a little bit more about the shadows.
I found it difficult to be totally introspective without thinking about the other influences in my life that sort of helped me look at how to improve myself, be better to myself, hold myself accountable. People like my personal trainer, you know, if I didn't have these appointments to show up with some of these people, I think I wouldn't be making as much progress. So I'm grateful to them and wanting to acknowledge that, as well as being introspective.
Thank you for sharing.
What rose up for me is that at age 80, my expectations for learning and growing are different.
Thank you for sharing that. That's awesome.
I thought this was a really good exercise. I could really touch in to myself in the past, less so in the future. But I think that connection is very important, and I intend to use this in future programs I may present. I think this is invaluable. I just thank you so much.
Thank you, Eleanor. I appreciate that. Yes, and in the chat, I found that I have been quite troubled lately due to life changes. Thank you for sharing.
Feeling hopeful and sad, paradoxically, joy and sorrow simultaneously.
Thank you for sharing, Kathleen. Think about this a year from now. Do you anticipate that there will be any surprises when you open this envelope? Remember, part of the exercise is, now that you've concluded writing this out, is to put this in an envelope and address it to yourself a year from now and set a reminder to open it. Do you think you will find any surprises? So how do we get to this journey back towards the light? One of the things that we have to do, that we must do, is we must start with the end in mind. And what's the end? The end is the light. We teach in behavior analysis, which is what I had dedicated my life doing, is working to help people understand behavior. And a part of understanding behavior is starting with the end in mind. When you reach that place where we journey back towards the light, who is that person that you want to be, right? And so if you start with the end in mind, it helps us right here and now in the present moment to engage in all of those behaviors that we will need in order to journey back towards the light. Darkness creates the need for light. And someone talked a little bit about the shadows. And the shadow side of us teaches us more about who we want to be in the light. And when we look around our world today, let's face it, we see nothing but chaos. From the war in Ukraine to the protests surrounding George Floyd to what happened yesterday in Illinois and the recent Supreme Court rulings. And the Bible and most religious texts from Buddhism to Hinduism seem to all be saying to us that life is a journey. And it's a journey that starts and ends with God, this creator, this great spirit. And we are always shown and told, we're always told, and as a behavior specialist, I can tell you it's true. The entire journey is a transformational journey. You're not the same as you were yesterday. You're not the same as you were last week, last year, last month. You have transformed. It's a transformational journey. And the transformation, guess what? It comes out of chaos. It does. We don't seem to change, and we don't change by continuing to do the same things that we've always done. We change when we are met with a challenge. We change when we are met with conflict. That's when we tend to change. And that's why it's so important that we begin our journeys through self-reflection. And someone mentioned journaling. I journal every day as well. Why? Because it helps me to go back. My granddaughters and my children kid me. I have boxes of journals from when I was in my early 20s, and I can go back and reflect in those journals how far my life has come and how far I've come along the journey, but most importantly, how I've changed along the journey. And so why do you think we need this transformation? And why is it we call on God when we always seem to be in our darkest hours? Because that's the moment of transformation along our journeys. The darkness often and always precedes the light. And it leads us to our greatest transformations along the journey. And so if you can indeed self-reflect, being authentic and introspective about who you are on this journey, you will transform your life. We're going to take about a 5-minute break. I want to give you about a 5-minute break, and then we're going to come back and do some exercises. When I lived in Japan, I had this wonderful opportunity to learn a lot about culture there. And I found a saying, and it was written in a Buddhist temple, and then I found it on little note cards, but it said, "I am not the same, having seen the moon shine on the other side of the world." and I instantly knew what it meant. With all that befalls us, from the macro to the micro, we are reminded every day that life is fragile, that we can never take it for granted. And while tragedy is a part of life, an inescapable aspect of our human condition, I believe good, absolute good, is still inherent in our world today. I see it every single day. And that is really the essence of our journey back towards the light. Emotionally and sometimes literally helping ourselves and others as we progress from one phase of our journey back towards the light to the next. But to get to the end, to get to this place where we know when we enter the light, we must first understand that the changes that we wish to see in this world, well, they must first start within our own hearts. We have to be able to face the person looking back at us in a mirror and determine and be honest with ourselves about what are the shadows and what's the light. We always want to point out that the other guy needs to change, but the other guy's transformation does nothing for you or me on our own individual journeys back towards the light. Matthew 7:3-5 reminds us, why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own? Every time I read that, I have to think about my own journey. It simply reminds me of my own journey. Someone wrote in the chat earlier before the break that it reminded them doing the exercise and thinking about transformation reminds them of Paul's journey from Saul to Paul. That is darkness being transformed into light. That's what his journey, and that's what that analogy is all about. The desires that we wish to see in others, our biases, the biases that we hold, it's really our own souls, our own spirits telling us what we truly need to see in ourselves. My mother used to say this thing about talking about people. She used to say, when you point a finger at somebody, your thumb is always pointing back to you. And so the biases that we hold against another person, another group of people, is really our own souls, our own spirits telling us what we truly need to see in ourselves. And so our isms in this world, they're simply a mirror reflection of who we really are. The change that we wish to see in other people, whether it's groups of people or an individual, it's that change that we need to begin to make in ourselves. It's that person that we truly see in the mirror. And after all, it's virtually impossible to transform the world on our journey without first transforming ourselves. And this transformation happened for me watching the sunset on the other side of the world. I realized that in that moment that neither the sun or the moon change because of their circumstance or their position. They were exactly what they were supposed to be on a completely opposite side of the world that I found myself in. In that moment, I embraced the light and I let go of what should be. Today, I'm not the same, having seen the moon shine on the other side of the world. We're going to enter into some breakout rooms. We're going to take about 10 minutes, 15 minutes actually. There are 7 behaviors that actually help lead us back through the journey. I want you to try in your breakout rooms to define what you believe those 7 behaviors are. Take that 15 minutes, but I need you to choose someone who can report back out for your group. And so as you enter the breakout rooms, take this information with you. What are the 7 behaviors that help lead us back through the journey? Once you know those, you can become more self-aware. And so I'm going to let the magic of Zoom and the tech support folks put you into breakout rooms, and we'll see you in 15 minutes. This is the moment where we're going to talk a little bit about, and I'm not certain how many groups, how many breakout rooms did we have? Were there 5 breakout rooms?
Correct.
Okay. And why don't we just go through the list? Breakout room 1. Did you choose someone to report back out for you? What do you think those 7 clear behaviors are that leads us on this journey towards the light?
I'm sorry, but it's not clear what number breakout group any of us were in. Maybe the organizer knew that, but I certainly didn't.
We were
Barry,
number one, Barry.
yeah, I was gonna say, Barry, your group was group 1.
Ah, good enough then. I'm Barry and I'm the reporter. We were quite confused as to what we were supposed to be doing. And so we generated a list of about 17 different practices that we would consider of value. And towards the end, we thought, well, perhaps the seven we were supposed to focus on were the ones that are in this Epictetus quote, and we were supposed to be defining them, but that's not what we did. So here is our list. Practice of connecting with one's inner self, forgiveness, gratitude, willingness, humility, especially about the quality of one's own ideas, compassion, having a curious attitude towards others and their views rather than a judgmental attitude, self-reflection, listening, generosity, making amends, creativity, love, presence, patience, and courage. And a friend contributed also a Stephen Covey quotation, seek first to understand, then to be understood, as an important practice.
Thank you, Barry. And Barry, the Epictetus quote was the cheat sheet. So it was there to do exactly what you thought. It was the cheat sheet. Let's go to breakout room 2.
I'm Karen Modell and I'm for the next group. Okay. And we also went off on our own tear and did not use the Epictetus quote, and felt that the first thing, one of the important, well, it was all important, but then we felt that none of it could really be done alone, that engagement in community was essential for the discernment. And then we came up with our own wonderful list that included truth and openness, and under it we had welcoming, inclusiveness, listening, vulnerability, and being engaged as part of openness. And being vulnerable is also a quality of courage, we felt. And then we got into detailed discussion of truth and truth telling, and is telling the truth different than truth telling, and transparency, authenticity, and humility also as part of that, and as part of having integrity, and that we also needed to be self-reflective in order to move towards the light. And then we didn't really have enough time to unpack some other things we thought that were important, like forgiveness and courage and trust.
Thank you, Karen.
Hard exercise to do with a large group in a short time.
Yes, it is. We recognize that, and I appreciate all of you for leaning into this one. What about group 3? And I can tell you group 3 is the group that I had the pleasure of being in. So the reporter for that, I think, is Julie.
Okay, so being very legalistic, we came up with 7 and we tried to make them behaviors. We had to twist a few of them by the arm, but being teachable, open, and curious, listening to others without filters or interruptions, choosing to love and be accepting, choosing to be present and mindful, being honest with self, taking time for discernment, listening and reflecting, choosing to respect and forgive self and others.
Thank you, Julie. Room 4.
Okay. Well, I offered to take notes and I didn't realize that we were going to have 30 some people or whatever with all it. But, and we brainstormed a bunch of words and then we tried to consolidate and didn't do really well, but we did some things. And I didn't see that quote till now. I don't know where it was hiding, but we had letting go or surrender, loving ourselves and others, thinking and acting as a member of a community, compassion, inclusivity, introspection, acceptance, hard work, forgiveness, listening, self-awareness, wonder, forbearance. Did I say, yeah, I had loving. Someone said spending all your money before you die, trust, and willingness to something. I can't read my writing here. I guess we were starting to consolidate right then. Does anyone know willingness to serve? To serve.
Thank you, Gail. And our final group.
That would be me. So our group we didn't do any coming together. And we just, different people spoke. So I'm just going to share what the people said, okay? And there may be some overlap, but we really didn't have time to consolidate. To be aware of one's monkey mind and being able to center oneself. Listen to others. Accept things that are, whoops, I turned the page the wrong way, sorry. Seek out people who share one's own assumptions so that one doesn't feel so isolated. Seek out people who do not share our assumptions so that we can listen to them and better understand. Give up the idea that we can do it all ourselves. Listen to what God might be saying to us. Surrender. Stepping aside. Training our egos to step aside. And surrendering to reality. The person mentioned surrendering to the light that one is given. Learning to let go of self-consciousness so that one can get to the center of nothingness. Be completely honest with oneself and others. Forgive others. Practice self-care. And in order to do that, you need to know yourself. Put yourself in situations where veils that are covering one's eyes are lifted.
Oh, thank you, Sally. Appreciate that. One of the things that I mentioned in the group that I had this opportunity to sit in was that we tend to typically, rather than describing the behavior, we talk about the emotion, right? And the emotions of love, the emotions of, if I meditate, those are all emotional things, right? Remember that we said behavior change. This was about behavior. You can't change yourself, and you cannot change the world around you unless you actually change your behavior. And I put that quote there because I really believe that Epictetus had it right? The proper work of the mind is the exercise of choice, refusal, yearning, repulsion, preparation, purpose, and assent. First, we always have choice to do and think right and to do the right thing. It's not enough for us to do good in this world. We have to do the right thing. We can refuse temptation, right? We can refuse to go along with the crowd. We can refuse to go along with collective thinking because someone is in our social group. We can refuse to go along with that because we can simply say to people, that's wrong. We can and do have this yearning, I heard this a lot, to do better, right? It's innate within us that we want to do better. And so, again, comes back to choice. It comes back to behavior. We can change our behavior. We can choose to be repulsed by negativity, bad influences, or what we know isn't true, right? If you know something, or you think you know something about a group of people, but it's really not true because not everybody in a group is going to always perform or act the same way, You can choose to be repulsed by that. You can choose to prepare today for the light tomorrow. So you have a choice. It comes down to, again, having that choice. We can choose to focus on our purpose here in the here and now. And we can choose to ascend towards the light and be free of the deception. Someone asked me recently when I did this, so what were the 7 behaviors? Choice, 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 and choice. We get to choose every single day. And so it is about choices. And how do we get there? It's called the way. That's how we get there. What's the right path and the right way for us to choose? Each day we're alive, we have a fresh start, and we have a brand new opportunity to become this better self through choice. The better part of us as we journey back towards the light, the better self, which is unique to each and every one of us. Remember, I said it's never about the other person. We always tend to think if this would change, or this person would change, or this group would change, we could change community, we could change. It's never about that. It's always about the choice that we make along the journey. It embodies our growth, leads us ever upward to become who we know that we can become. It inspires us to do more and to be more. With a deeper perspective, we can stop chasing after what we believe will make us happy if other people change, because we know that everything we do is leading us back towards the light. The life on this journey is not given to us. It's recognized by us. And once we can recognize the choices that we make every single day, it's that, and in those choices, that will lead us back towards the light. Christ said, I am the way, the truth, and the light. No man comes unto the Father except by me. I don't believe that he meant that he would select or choose because we were given free will. I believe that he simply meant that we get to choose. And by learning the behaviors that we need to go back towards the light is how we get to I am the way, the truth, and the light. And so what are the behaviors we need along this journey back? We just talked about the 7 are always related to choice. The behaviors we need most on this journey back towards the light. One of my favorite quotes comes from Heraclitus, who said, for to be wise is only one thing, to fix our attention on our intelligence, which guides all things everywhere. In other words, he was simply saying, make the right choices. And here are some of those choices. Practicing patience while waiting means you are exhibiting a level of wisdom and a choice along the journey. Patience is described as showing tolerance and fortitude towards others along the journey. Patience is never about the other guy. It's never about that guy in front of me that just cut me off. It's about me. Learning to be free. Freedom only comes from authenticity. Freedom is a state of being and can never be taken by the crowd or the collective mentality. It allows you to think and choose for yourself on the journey back towards the light. You should always ask why. Always, whether it's information you receive from social media or from television, you should always question and ask, is it accurate and why? Learning to forgive. In the words of Dale Carnegie, any fool can criticize, condemn, and complain, but it takes character and self-control to be understanding and forgiving. Forgiving those who hurt you is a strength, and is a strength that we need as we journey back towards the light. Along the journey, you have to learn the language of real friendship. And I'm learning along the journey that my first and best friend is myself. We have to learn to enjoy our own company and to be our own best friends. It is the only way you can get centered and grounded along the journey. And we must live by that old adage, to have a friend, you must first be a friend, and you must first be a friend to yourself. Humility, which is the source of all strength. Humility is a quiet confidence in who we are and who we are becoming. It's about knowing and owning our mistakes and learning to walk beyond them and doing the right thing with second chances. Courage. Courage, it's not the opposite of cowardice. but it's the act of non-conformity. I remember when I was in college and I joined a sorority and I went to the interview and they asked me to give a characteristic about myself. And I said, I'm non-conforming. And while I want to join this sorority, I'm not going to walk in lockstep with you. I'm going to tell you if I disagree with you. The journey towards the light will require non-conformity or courage to hold fast to what you know is true. In each moment, we can make a choice to act courageously or choose the easy, fear-based way. And as Mahatma Gandhi once said, there would be nothing to frighten us if we just simply refuse to be afraid. And so when you come upon those situations where you have to make a choice, remember, it's always your behavior, not the other guy's behavior. Will you be able to stand and refuse to be afraid? Contentment. We hear so often, I'll be happy when. But contentment along the journey back towards the light means exactly what Paul said. Whether I am abased or abound, I am content. Contentment and peace along the journey back towards the light means that you have accepted that in any moment you can be ready to walk into the light. So, Nana, is any of this real? We are all headed back towards the light the day we are born. Many of us choose simply not to see that. What I know is that words, everything we speak, is this great mystery that's been given to us and will help us follow along, back along the journey towards the light. Words are living, breathing, and moving beings. We are all interconnected back along the journey towards the light through our words. We're being led back into the light, out of order and into disorder. And in terms of the words of a 3-year-old, Nana, is any of this real? Today, as I move closer towards the light on my own journey back, I have come to understand one thing, that this light of death is also the light of life. And so I invite you today to think about your own journey, to think about the way back, and to remember, it's not the other person, it's our behaviors that we have to be responsible for on the journey back. The light of death is also the light of life. Thank you. I want to open this up to any questions, and you can put questions in the chat. There is a QA moderator. You can enter any questions into the chat, but I would love to open this up about this journey back to all of you.
Thank you, Yolanda. I actually do have a question that came in at the end there, before you actually asked for them. And the question is, the question says, who wants to look at themselves in the mirror? And I got a little bit more information from them, so I'm going to go a little farther from that. And that is, how do we prepare ourselves to look in the mirror when we're not a group that's, or someone who struggles to acknowledge and to look at change? Because to look in that mirror it takes some effort.
It takes courage. It takes courage to be authentic with yourself, who you are and who you want to become. But I will tell you that there is no way to even get there without challenging yourself to look in the mirror, to look at that person, right? To look at your shadows and to look at the light within you. We all have both shadow and light within us, but unless we are willing to confront the darkness that's in all of us, we cannot conquer it. And so you have to, and so it starts with, what did I say the 7 behaviors are? Choice, 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 and choice, right? It always comes down to choice. And being afraid, unfortunately, is also a choice that we get to make. And so if we want, as we prepare for this journey back towards the light, if we want to get there, we have to be able to face that.
Thank you. It's for those of you who haven't done the anti-bias trainings and anti-racism trainings we did this year with Yolanda, it reminds me a lot about just being able to acknowledge the bias I have. It's that same thing still.
And we all have bias. I remind people of that all the time. Bias isn't in one group of folks or another. We all have biases. We have a need to classify and label the world around us. That's how we understand it, right? But we have to be able to be willing to confront those things that are negative, that are leads us into temptation, right? We have to be able to confront those things, and you cannot conquer what you will not confront.
I don't have any more questions. So and we're a little bit after the half hour, so I think I might close us. Oh, I do have one more question. I'm going to do this question, then I'm going to close this. How do we go about social justice work disagreeing with people whose actions hurt others?
That's a really good question. But remember, your job, your personal job, your behavior is to change yourself, right? In the work that I do in DE&I, I tell people all the time, I can give you access to information. That's my behavior, is to put information out there, right? But I can never make people accept that information. All I can do is what I have been placed here to do, which is to put this information out here that helps us become better human beings. You can never force the other guy, even though we want to, right? You can't. I work in public policy. We write laws all the time. Look at how many people don't abide by those laws, right? And so you can never fully change someone. All you can do is give people information that can help them change, right? Remember, it's always about our own behavior and never about somebody else's behavior.
Well, thank you, Yolanda. I want to thank you for the time you spent in preparing for this message for us tonight, giving us this opportunity to continue to always look at ourselves and change our own behaviors.